All right, everybody, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Should we all rise for the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God. Thank you very much. Roll call next.
Jamie Melky.
Here.
Matt O'Gara. Kathy Macho.
Here.
Michael Behrman.
Here.
Nancy Rondell. We do have a forum.
Fantastic. Okay, we got a big crowd tonight. 3 minutes to speak. If you want to speak tonight, 3 minutes to speak if you have something to say. And I guess we'll get this started. If there's any citizens' comment on anything that's not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. Anybody? Guess we're all here for the agenda. Anybody on Zoom or computer? Doesn't look like it. All right. Consent agenda. Any issues, comments on the consent agenda?
Gonna add one item, and that's bowling on Main Street. We just received that application from the chamber this weekend. Annual event, so
All right.
you all have received that in your email.
I don't have a problem with the bowling. Okay.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Second.
Kathy Macho.
Yes.
Michael Behrman.
Yes.
Matt O'Gara.
Yes.
Nancy Rondell.
Yeah.
Jamie Melky.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. We do have a change to the agenda. The DDA request has been withdrawn temporarily. So we can jump right into the public hearing to vacate Washington.
All right, thank you, council. So we heard about this in February. This was a request from George Pete and Dilly Kirby to vacate an unapproved alley and the end of Washington Street on just north of 4th Street. As you can see in this picture right here, there are two houses abut Washington Street. Washington Street here is in the red, and it ends right there at the bluff. At the last council meeting, this was discussed. Council was not in favor of abandoning any part of the alley behind their homes, but was going to consider vacating the portion of Washington Street that butts their homes. At that meeting, council wanted to see potentially utility or pedestrian easement and also with a provision that no structure to be built in that easement area if they were to vacate this portion. So just have a couple images. Again, these were in the packet last time. This is a street view of the two homes. And this is Washington Street where it dead ends there, right by the bluff. DPW Director Lucas Fannersy and Police Chief Kyle Knight both had concerns that should be considered as part of this vacation. The one concern is about the traffic on 4th Street, and Police Chief Knight would like to see a TCO to eliminate on-street parking on 4th Street from Washington Street west to M119. It's a part of the road that narrows, and that on-street parking in the area would restrict the ability for emergency vehicles and DPW vehicles to safely navigate. So as you can see at this point, right here, parking, there is a parking spot, as you can see in the corner of in front of Pete's house that he parks his vehicle in, and there's a little gravel spot that's in the right of way. And I think Lucas also has some images in his memo, as I'm sure you read. He has also some concerns about drainage that need to be addressed from Dilly's property to the sidewalk right here. He believes those issues should probably be addressed right here. There's some pooling of water from the back there. Those are essentially the main issues that Kyle and Lucas had. So really, this is a public hearing. This is an opportunity for council to take in any public input it can be from George and Dilly, of course, from anybody else. Hold a public hearing. So there should be a motion to open the hearing, hold the hearing, and then close the hearing, and then council should have a discussion. If there's any objections to the request to vacate, then the council needs to approve this by a 4-1 vote, or a 4-person majority needs to approve this.
I'll make a motion, we open the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. P, would you like to speak to us at all?
Sure, I can.
Actually, I'd like, if you could come up to the podium.
Sure. George P. 508 West 4th Street. So this is actually our driveway, even though it's Washington Street. And it's been unimproved for as long as I've owned my home. Dilly has owned her home for over 20 years and has maintained the end of Washington Street as her driveway. Without any help or intervention from the city ever, as far as she's indicated to me, and certainly not in the 6 years that I've owned my house. So in light of wanting to address the drainage issues, properly grade and maintain the driveway, before investing a lot of my own money, I wanted to see if we could incorporate this into our 2 properties so that whatever money and investment we make, we also receive in the value of our properties afterwards. That's really the long and short of it. Any questions?
Okay. Good.
I'll be real quick. I'm George's
Could
neighbor.
you come up front?
Two doors down. I fully
Could you come
support.
up front?
I fully support it, John.
Okay. Yeah, we'd like everyone to come up front and
It's
speak to
amazing.
the council.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I see that. Is there anyone else for public comment? No? Okay. Anyone online? You can see? I guess I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. What do you think, gang? Yeah, I'd like to see him get his driveway. With, an easement. And maintain or fix the drainage problems. The other,
I did have a question for Mr. Pete. As far as the vehicle that's been parking toward the street, do you think that would be alleviated? Or would you be able to?
I do. So another part of the issue is that both of our homes are quite old, especially mine. And the property lines are somewhat clear, but they're not the best. I never had the property surveyed when I bought it. I do know, though, that part of my garage, if it's not already on Washington Street or the end of it, it's certainly, there's no setback. So if I ever wanted to improve my garage or the area where I could potentially park another vehicle, I don't really have any room to do that the way that the property is currently situated. So yes, that would alleviate that.
Is Lucas and the other comment that we got today, is there any concern that any of the issues with the drainage and need to be resolved before city council passes this?
I think it was a suggestion to do it simultaneously, to make a recommendation that the vacation, there's a conditions that these issues would be addressed and happen.
Okay. Okay.
I'm a little hesitant to do it. It's 66 feet wide. So it's the size of a city lot, basically. We have in the past given up the right to dead end roads like this and then had some concerns and kind of wished we hadn't done that because we didn't have access to some of our property. So I'm very hesitant to do that, not because I don't want George to have a driveway, but I'm hesitant to do that. That is our one driveway into the alley that the city does own behind that property. Because the other one is pretty wet. The other access point, which is further down 4th Street, is pretty wet. You know, I want them obviously to be able to use it. They gotta use it to get in their driveways. I know that, but it is a public street, so they can use it. I don't know if the city would consider maintaining it better. You know, that's, I think, part of the concern is we don't maintain that because there's not a lot of use on it. But it is a public street. And their driveways come off of it, just like lots of other public streets, the driveways come off of. So I'm always hesitant to give up city property. And it's not a real wise thing. Not the alley. We're talking just about the street.
Just the street,
Yeah, we
not
did
the alley. Thank you.
Strong either way.
I'm sorry.
They can't hear you.
What did you
I
say?
said I don't really feel that strongly either way, like I'm open to it, but I do agree with Nancy that if we said no, we should maybe take better care of it.
If there was a easement and we needed to access the alley through that, method, is that something that we could do? You know, would we still be able to access that alley through, what was formerly Washington Street?
If you reserved an easement, yes, you would have the right to do that.
Would that, does that make you feel?
It's for me more, it's just giving up city property. I struggle with giving up city property. Because they're welcome to use it now, you know, they're welcome to use it and they're welcome to have their driveways off of it. Certainly understand why they want to own it. I get that, but that's a fairly decent chunk of land just to give away. And it's big enough for a house if there wasn't a street there. So I'm hesitant to do that. But
I guess my only question is, in the future, if the city wanted to put another walkway up the hill, if we give that up, it makes that more difficult.
The walkway would have to go all the way far enough west beyond Ann Street because it's private property in between M119 and the city.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure what the ownership was.
My feelings are, it has been done in circumstances like this. Not. It's my understanding the city can't sell the property for a lot without going to the voters because it's, you know, gonna be worth more than $2,000 and it would need a 3/5 approval from the voters, so that's probably unlikely. So while I get, yeah, that is the size of the city lot. I don't know how realistic that would be for it ever to be turned into somebody's lot.
It would block the access to their driveways, which we can't, like if we sold it,
Exactly.
yeah, like. it
So
can't
it's,
be
or
done.
if we wanted to use that to build, the city build something there, again, it would block access to their driveway, so. While I understand the theory of not giving up city property. Not sure that there's any benefit to the city for hanging onto it. especially with stipulations of easement, in there, that's, so.
My other thought when I was reading all of this was if we're going to say no parking on Fourth Street. And we do know people go down there to walk, they sometimes go, the nature is, would this be a place that people could park their vehicle instead of along Fourth Street? That was just a consideration that I thought about, where obviously if we give it up, we can't have people park there. Whereas if we're going to say no more parking on Fourth Street, and which is apparently a problem, they don't go down there all that much.
There's parking by the,
There is some parking down
Yeah.
by the walkway.
yeah.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how far down.
And again, you would be, if you allowed people to park there, you'd be blocking the access to their driveways.
Well, they couldn't park on both sides. You'd have to park around the road. It was just a thought when I was reading the whole packet together. Just that spot, so. That's just where I'm.
If the city chose to not grant this and keep it, what kind of maintenance would need to be done to Washington Street to?
I'm not sure. I have to have Lucas look at that. I don't know if it needs, George, does it needs resurfacing, repaving? Is that kind of
Yeah,
maintenance
it
you're
needs
talking?
grading and resurfacing.
Okay.
So we would look at where it could go on our capital improvements project or any project. We can look into that.
Okay, so no ballpark on what that would cost.
More than 1,000, less than 1 million.
Thanks. That's too big a ballpark.
Right.
Hmm. Not excited.
Any more discussion? Well, I make motion that we vacate the alley. With
No,
Street, not the alley.
or the street,
Sorry.
the street, sorry. And we maintain an easement per the city attorney and have them fix the drainage issue at the end of the street. And remove the parking spot in front of Mr. Pete's house.
And we also, last time we talked, I'm asking before they put it on, that there couldn't be anything built within that.
Right. And that
They
nothing.
stipulated there couldn't be any.
Structure, so maintained as a driveway.
The city has access if needed to access the alleyway.
Did you get that, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do need a second.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Jamie Melky,
Yes.
Nancy Rondell,
No,
Matt Bulgara,
Yes.
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
Kathy Macho.
yes.
Motion carried.
Good. Congratulations, George.
Thank
We'll
you.
work on specific, we'll work, George, we'll work on specific language.
We'll get a resolution.
Yeah, we'll need a final resolution. That can go on the consent agenda probably.
Okay.
All right. Zoning code update presentation. So today we also have John Angeli, who's the city planning consultant with us, Jeff Grimm, zoning administrator. I'll do a general presentation of the zoning code update. They can answer definitely a lot of the specifics about it. We also have some planning commission members in attendance as well who worked on this for a while.
Commissioner, may we ask you to speak up, please? It's very difficult to hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
we'll do our best.
All right, so the planning commission approved the zoning code, the proposed zoning code on March 7th, 2024. There is, the latest edition is online. The only change compared to the previous draft was changes in the TR district on Bay Street. They created a Bay Street overlay district, and we'll get into more details there in a little bit. The plan commission is also recommending that council adopt ordinance 439, which includes the proposed zoning code as well as language on how to apply the new zoning code to certain sections of our city code that relate to zoning code districts, like our noise ordinance, and short-term rentals, for example. So we got here, it all starts with the master plan. The master plan update process began in January of 2020. Back then, we had about 20 meetings, 12 public surveys, and separate public input sessions that helped create the master plan. It was finally adopted by council on April 18th, 2022. And then after that, the planning commission and council resolved to update the zoning code. The first substantive planning commission discussion of the zoning code began on July 21st of 2022. Then in 2023, March, they formed a zoning subcommittee that would work on details and then regularly bring recommendations to the planning commission. Planning commission held 21 meetings and 3 open house sessions throughout the zoning code update process, specifically on the zoning code. So here, I won't go into detail of all the meetings, but there's an outline, a timeline of all the issues that were discussed at each meeting. You'll see some of the meetings discuss specific issues such as accessory dwelling units, or flag lots. There were some general discussions at the at the planning commission about the zoning code update. And then the bulk of the conversations revolved around articles 2 and 3, which are the districts and the uses and dimensions of those districts. And that's articles 2 and 3 you see, and from October of 2022 through the spring of 2023, the planning commission had several meetings on articles 2 and 3. In January of this year, they gave a joint planning commission and ZBA meeting to review the zoning code changes and get some input from the zoning board as well. And then the public hearing started in February. There's 2 public hearings, one on February 8th and one on February 15th. There was 2 more planning commission meetings in addition to those public hearings on the 22nd and on the 7th of March. Planning commission's goals for updating the zoning code. The primarily was to align it with the master plan, but they also had other considerations. Of course, to anticipate the future needs of residents, reorganize and modernize the code, give some more flexibility and options for property owners, make it more user-friendly and clear up some of the processes. I'll do an article review of the zoning code, and then I'll get into some of the main changes between the current code and the proposed code. Of course, Article 1 is just the purpose of the code. That's pretty straightforward. Basically says that the zoning code is enacted in accordance with the intent of the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, which is to help promote and improve land development that is logical and consistent, and it's used as a tool to accomplish goals in the city's master plan. Article 2 is what divides the city into its zoning districts. There's 9 districts proposed. The article explains the intent of each zoning district. It also delineates the boundaries of zoning districts on a map, and it provides rules for interpreting those zoning district boundaries. This is just a map of the proposed 9 zoning districts. We have residential neighborhood, residential multiple, mobile home park, and residential waterfront as our residential districts. Community district is for public purposes or quasi-public purposes. There's a CBD, the central business districts, and B1, which is the convenience business district, which are the primary commercial districts. There's also the waterfront district, which is also a specific kind of commercial uses there. And then there's a manufacturing district. In Article 3, there's a table that shows the allowed uses at each district. And as a general rule, the uses are categorized in the following way. There's agricultural uses, residential uses, public uses, telecommunications, commercial, manufacturing, and state licensed facilities. And then Article 3 also explains the differences between special uses, special land uses, and permitted uses. In Article 3, we also get into the general dimensional requirements for the districts. With regards to our 2 main residential districts, our largest ones, I should say, the residential neighborhood district, which is the largest, the minimum lot width is 52 feet. Minimum lot area is 6,800 square feet about. Maximum lot coverage is 40%. Front setbacks, side setbacks are all there, as you can see too. The residential waterfront districts has much larger area. There's a 25,000 square foot minimum lot area as opposed to the 6,800 square foot in the residential neighborhood district. And there's a minimum lot width of 100 feet. Maximum height for buildings for homes is 35 feet in both districts. In the two main commercial districts, the central business district, there are no dimensional requirements except maximum height of 42 feet. And the convenience business district, there are setback requirements, maximum height restriction of 35 feet, as well as a maximum lot coverage of 90%. In Article 4, we talk about the overlay districts, and these are districts that are overlaid over the base of the zoning code districts to alter some of the underlying district regulations. So these are tools that we use to deal with special situations or to accomplish specific goals in zoning code. There's 6 total overlay districts. 2 of them are essentially new. We'll get into those later, the agricultural and the Bay Street overlay district. Restrict the floodplain and the shoreline protection. They're called overlay. That's what's new on this code, but they were as part of regulations in a different code. They just weren't called overlay districts, but we had them in the previous code. But we organized them as overlay districts for this code. Article 5 is just general provisions that apply to all districts, all property owners. There's a lot of general provisions in this Article 5, but in general, you can categorize them in 3 different ways. There's what's allowed or not allowed on properties such as livestock, vehicles, boats, machinery, RVs, et cetera, and how you regulate things that are allowed or not allowed on property. There's land protection, so we talk about building grades, earth removal, yard encroachments, weather barrier material. And then there's safety, so you want clear vision areas, corner lots, driveway requirements, and the restoration of unsafe buildings. There's more to it than just that, but that's a general way to picture what the general provisions are in Article 5. Article 6 highlights the site development standards. These are the minimum requirements an applicant must adhere to when developing a site. And the main categories there, including vehicle and bicycle parking, non-motorized transportation, landscaping, exterior lighting, stormwater management, and rooftop decks. Of course, not all of those apply to every single application, but those are the standards, minimum standards that need to be addressed. Supplemental use provisions in Article 7. Unlike the general provisions, which apply to all districts, these apply only to districts where they're specifically allowed. And some of the more common or noteworthy ones are the accessory buildings, which are pretty common on properties, accessory dwelling units, decks, patios, duplexes and triplexes, fences, home occupation, and outdoor storage. Article 8 details the site plan review. Much of this is pretty much the same from the previous zoning code. We did, for part of the application procedures, we did add, some more about conceptual review and completeness review, but this basically outlines the requirements when you are applying to develop or to get a permit or to get an approval from the planning commission, and also outlines the steps to get approved, or at least to get heard before the planning commission. And there are separate standards under site plan review as well. Article 9 highlights the special land use approvals. Special land uses are for uses that, we may consider detrimental to other uses that are permitted by right, or they may contain unique features, which does require further scrutiny and review by the planning commission. They do require a public hearing with proper notifications sent to neighboring property owners. So there's 8 special land use review standards. One is to make sure it complies with all site plan standards. Second is to make sure it meets the general intent of the zoning code. Third is to make sure that it's harmonious with the neighboring uses and properties. We want to make sure that it's adequately served by public infrastructure and services, and it does not create a nuisance or a hazardous situation. We want to make sure it doesn't cause excessive additional public expenses for public facilities and services. We also want to ensure that it meets conditions of the zoning district and that it will not injure neighboring property values. So the planning commission hears these at a public hearing, and then they weigh all these 8 different standards when they issue a decision. If the planning commission determines that an applicant meets all these 8 standards, then they will issue an approval. Article 10 talks about other land development options. These give landowners more options, but also require more scrutiny and contain more different standards of review than even a special land use. Some of them that we already have in our current code, such as planned developments and manufactured home developments. There's condominium developments, condo hotels, and one that we're proposing also is in this proposed code is flag lots. Article 11 basically outlines the zoning board of appeals, what it is, how to get in front of the zoning board of appeals. Usually you go to the zoning board for 3 different reasons. One would be for an appeal to a zoning administrator decision or to the planning commission decision. You would also go if you want a variance from dimensional use or uses that are allowed in that district. So for example, if there's a setback of requirement of 8 feet, but you want a setback requirement of 7 feet, the zoning administrator can't approve that, so you'd have to go to the zoning board of appeals to hear that variance. And also, this happens not as frequently, but for interpretations of district boundaries. So when district boundaries aren't clear on the map and the zoning administrator has to make an interpretation, if someone disagrees with that interpretation of the zoning district boundary, then they can appeal that to the zoning board of appeals. Article 12 highlights the administration and enforcement. Again, it goes into the duties of the zoning administrator, details the process for applying and receiving a permit, and then outlines violations and penalties for violating the zoning code. Article 13 is really just about amendments, how to amend the code. Article 14 is definitions. This is a pretty lengthy part of the code. There's over 400 definitions. And also gives a little methodology how to detail the rules for interpreting the meaning of words if there's any kind of concern or disagreement on how to interpret definitions. And finally, Article 15, something different or better than we had in the current code is visuals to better demonstrate the intent or expectation of certain rules, especially related to dimensions of lots and buildings. So that's just a general overview of what the zoning code is. That's the proposed zoning code. But there are some changes. Much of the code is the same, but there are some big changes, and we want to go over those changes because those are probably what's most important to the council to know what's changing. The first is the consolidation and reconfiguration of zoning districts. In the current code, there's 17, and that is now going to 9 districts. Not all properties in a current district are going to the same district. But primarily, however, residential neighborhood encompasses our current R1A, R1B, R1C, AR, and R2 properties. These are our standard residential districts, and AR is our agricultural residential. So it's a hybrid agricultural and residential district. They're all going to the RN. RW is residential waterfront. It encompasses portions of the R1A district and the R1E. The new CBD encompasses the current CBD plus some B1 and B2 properties, as well as some TR properties, transitional residential. The new B1 is above lake or above the bluff, I should say, and that incorporates current D2 districts and ROS, which is residential office service districts. The other districts mostly remain the same. Essentially, the M1 is the manufacturing, RM is residential multiple, MHP is a mobile home park off of Lake Street, and then WF is waterfront. The community district includes more properties than before because it shows properties that are currently used for public or recreation purposes that the city owns, or properties that would be used for public recreation or quasi-public purposes in the future. So we highlighted in the map on the proposed zoning map which properties around town are owned by the public or by the school or the city to denote that those are community districts. In the current zoning map, those aren't all noted like that. So we wanted to figure that out. There are 2 new overlay districts. One is an agricultural overlay district. It covers the agricultural residential properties on West Lake Street, and it allows the continuance, a by right continuance of commercial farming operations on those properties. Other properties in the residential neighborhood can do farming. They can do personal farming, like have a vegetable gardens, fruit trees, vineyards, non-livestock kind of gardening and farming, but not for commercial purposes. So this agricultural overlay district specifies these properties can be used for commercial agriculture. The Bay Street overlay district covers properties on Bay Street between Judd and Spring, and it's intended to preserve the single-family residential use of existing homes while managing any future conversion of those homes to commercial. In this map, it's a little hard to see, but you can see this purple boundary denotes the boundaries of the Bay Street overlay district. And this is what the Planning Commission had discussed at their March 7th meeting. Dimensional requirements. So in a residential neighborhood, the minimum lot size, it's greater than the current R1C minimum. So the R1C minimum right now is 6,500. The proposed is 6854, I believe, or somewhere around there. So the majority of residential lots in the city are actually R1C. So for most people, the minimum lot size requirement is actually increasing. But it is smaller. The dimensions are, lot size dimensions are smaller than agricultural, residential, R1A, B, and E. The minimum lot width requirements are smaller. Setbacks are generally smaller, but the side setbacks are the same as R1C district. There's smaller minimum dwelling size. Current code is 864 square feet. The proposed code is 560 square feet. The residential waterfront dimensions are generally larger than the RN. The central business district, really what's changed in dimensions is a 42-foot maximum building height versus a 30-foot maximum building height. ADUs or accessory dwelling units are in the proposed code. They would be permitted by right in the RN, R1, and B1 district. These are attached to single-family homes or detached in the rear of a property. The minimum size is 350 square feet, and the maximum size is 75% of the principal building's first floor footprint. So not 75% of the size of the house, but 75% of the principal building's first floor footprint. Cannot be used as short-term rental, and a minimum of 1 parking space required on site. In our current code, we have a term called guest quarters, which in R1A and R1E, these are permitted by right. They can be used by friends, relatives, and domestic employees. So we essentially have ADUs in these two districts. But in R1B, R1C, and R2, they require special land use approval and only can be occupied by friends and relatives, and the length of stay is limited to 21 days. To friends and relatives must leave for 30 days before returning. Other relatives and friends can come and stay when those friends and relatives leave. This is something that's kind of been arduous it's hard to keep track of. The only way to keep track of it is to knock on doors and say, you have friends and really, it's really hard to keep track of who's staying at these guest quarters. And there's also a difference between R1A and R1E versus the rest. So, why R1A and R1E allowed domestic employees to be in their guest houses, but they weren't allowed to be on other residential properties I'm not 100% clear about that, but there are some differences in the current code about that. And why they're allowed by right in R1A and R1E and not in R1C and B is also another point to consider. Flag lots would be allowed in RN, RW, and B1. So this is residential neighborhood, residential waterfront, and the B1. It's reviewed by administrative review committee. I'll get to that in a little bit, but it's not an approval by the zoning administrator, but it also doesn't have to go to the planning commission. There's an in-between type of committee that would review these flag lot splits. They must meet the minimum lot size requirements for that district. So, for example, in the residential neighborhood district, the minimum lot size requirement now would be 6,800 square feet about. You can't split your lot into a flag lot unless you have the necessary minimum lot size requirements for 2 lots. So you would need essentially about 13,700 square feet in order to make a flag lot. So in order to create 2 lots from a property in the RN district, you would need 13,700 square feet. So flag lots must meet the minimum lot size requirements and other dimensional standards of a regular lot. They must have minimum of 15 feet of frontage. So example, a lot with 60 foot of frontage cannot be split into a flag lot because the remaining lot would have less than the minimum required frontage, which is 52 feet. The pole of the flag lot, which is, if you imagine the pole, and I'll show this picture here, that cannot be longer than 200 feet. So this is in the graphic section of the proposed code, showing what a flag lot looks like. So this flag pole right here cannot be longer than 200 feet. Duplexes and triplexes, they would be permitted in the residential neighborhood, residential waterfront, and B1 district by right. In the current code, they're currently permitted in the R2 district and the RM district. So the R2 district is a significant part of the south side of Main Street coming into town, and also on the north side of 3rd Street, East 3rd Street. It would now need special land use approval in the residential multiple district. So in the RM district currently, Duplexes can be built by right, but now they would require special land use approval there, so you can focus on multiple residential properties in that district. Triplexes would be special land uses in those districts as well. The current code permits them by right in the residential multiple zoning district. And the rest applies equally to duplexes and triplexes. They must be compatible with the size, scale, mass, and orientation of single-family homes. Parking and garages must be to the side or the rear of lots, so they can't be in the front. And they have some special additional architectural requirements to alleviate any concerns of not keeping the character with single-family neighborhood homes. The Administrative Review Committee, this is not in the current code, I mentioned it earlier. It would be comprised of the zoning administrator, the planning commission chair, one more planning commission member, city attorney, city manager, and the planning consultant. And it would be for site plans that might need more review than just a simple zoning administrator review, but maybe not the full scrutiny of a planning commission review. It includes, reviews of ADUs and rooming houses, as well as single-family homes in the B1 district. So those are the major changes. Of course, there's other changes, and John and Jeff can speak to those if you have questions about them. But I think the next steps here is council discusses a proposed code. You determine if you need more information, more public comment, or more time to make a decision. You can request more data, review on specific topics if needed. And when if or when you're comfortable with the proposed code, you can adopt ordinance 439. As mentioned, ordinance 439 has language to adopt the proposed zoning code. It also has language to clarify how these new districts would apply to the city code language where we talk about old districts. Again, signage, short-term rentals, and noise control. Signage is something that the city is going to hopefully tackle afterwards, because there are some changes or improvements we need to make to our signage code requirements as well. But so this is what ordinance 439 is. So that's all I have.
Hey, guess it's public comment time. Like you to come up to the front. You've got 3 minutes to talk. Yes, in the back. Yeah, come on up, Jeff.
First of all, thank you for the history lesson. What staff left out, and this is all part of the cog to get us into the RRC, and it certainly helped meet that requirement. So misleading, to say the least. Hello, my name is Jeff James. I pay taxes and live in the city that staff seeks to destroy with his agenda. Why is the cart leading the horse? The city of Harbor Springs is to adhere to the Public Acts of 1909 through our city codes. Our charter states in section 4.1, council is the legislating and governing body, staff, city manager administers that legislation. Section 4.6 states council's duty is to preserve that distinction between policy forming and administrative functions of city government. This begs the question, why is a staff member, city manager leading the city council? This is not in our charter. Staff is to administer the duties set forth by the council, not the other way around. It's past time for leadership to go back to the charter. Another question screaming out is, why is this disaster so important to city staff, city manager? That does not even live in the city he seeks to change. Is there a kickback involved? If not, then what is it? Unless we were lied to, we were told by staff, city manager, that he wants the RRC for potential grants. You don't destroy a town over potential grants that will have dangerous and far-reaching strings attached. It is your job as city council to dictate to staff, city manager, that the people have spoken and they don't want to be part of the RRC or this register enforced upon zoning changes that will ruin Harbor Springs over the next many years. Do your job, represent the people that elected you as the city charter request. Section 6.9 also needs to be noted that no member shall vote on any question when he or she has a financial interest. Wonder if that should also apply to the head of zoning commission. I have already shared with the 5 of you plus Mulder the 2 obvious conflicts of interest. Both would hold water in the event of potential legal action. In recent years, the people of Harbor Springs and surrounding area have raised about $7 million for 5 projects to benefit the city. We don't need Lansing. We don't need the RRC or any of the potential grants that will come with strings to dictate and ruin what works for this little 1.5 square mile area. The RRC is for Blight, and that is not Harbor Springs. We, the people, are perfectly able to redevelop as needed, and it has been proven. Keep Lansing away. This is what the people are screaming at their top of their lungs, writing in the paper, talking to these chambers and on the street. Now it is your responsibility as elected officials to represent us and tell staff we don't want to be a redevelopment community, nor do we want the smaller lots, flag lots, and these egregious overdone changes to our zoning code. The only person I've found that's for this abortion is staff, city manager, city council member whose husband, head of zoning and planning, and has a low-income housing agenda. It is now time for us to take back our town and go back to the drawing board and get us out of the RRC. We were told you wanted to hear from the people, yet you do nothing with that information. This time it's 99% to 1% against this atrocity. What more do you all need to hear? What part are you all missing? Not recognizing an overwhelming number of people that do not want the RRC and Lansing running our town is a huge issue that needs to be resolved.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing your job.
Next.
My name's Rick Karczynski. I live at 465 State Street. I am a member of the commission, the planning commission, and I have been involved in the making of this code revision since it started. I've been to all the meetings. The one thing I would like to impress on everybody is RRC has never come up in anything, in any of our meetings. This is nothing to do with that. We already meet our RRC standards, so it's not even a point to be made. The RRC is just brought up by a lot of conspiracy people who are trying to throw this good improvement for the city off track. The whole idea of this plan is to simplify things, make it easier for property owners to do things with their property, give them more options, and to save them money by establishing a committee to look at things so they don't have to come through the full board. So I just wish we could move on with this and give up this whole idea of RRC. It's just spinning our wheels and wasting time. And I hope you'll look at this tonight and help move it forward. Thank you.
Go back under the RRC.
Let's keep it civil. We don't need any comments.
My phone can't hear, I can't hear anything. Do we have a microphone for people
We
speaking?
don't have a microphone. What the public comments is for the individual to address council, so it's more like the council.
Oh,
does that.
come
So-
on, the
Wait. This is a
taxpayers.
public meeting. You must allow us to hear. Okay?
Exactly.
We don't have a microphone, and that's the purpose of public comment, is for them to address the council, so council can hear the public comment.
My name is Kathleen Sarah. We live in,
Kathleen, you address us, not the crowd.
oh, well, I'm gonna address everybody. How's that?
No, just the council.
Yeah. I'm gonna address everyone. My name is Kathleen Sarah. Our full-time residence is in Birchwood. We also own a home on 4th Street. I have been following, we've only owned the home on 4th Street for about a year. So I'm new to paying attention to what's happening within the city and this whole zoning process. I have a couple of questions and comments. First off, it seems to me, I understand updating zoning, that makes sense. But this RRC, which the gentleman who's on the planning committee says has never come up. So I would like an agreement right here and now tonight from the city council that you will not apply for certification from the state to be an RRC city. That would be one of the first things. And the next thing I'd like to understand is why are flag lots required or being considered? I used to live in Hermosa Beach, California, where they did a similar thing. And what we ended up with was duplexes, that's what it looked like, was duplexes where you had a front unit then you had a long driveway, and you had the back unit. And there were multiple lots that looked like that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Next. Anybody?
All right. My name's Randy Seiss. I'm a licensed registered architect in the state of Michigan. I received my degree in 2006, a master's degree, and while attaining that degree, I taught a course in site planning and took courses in urban planning. And what I think is happening here is that our city council and the city is looking forward and planning instead of going in reverse and looking backwards. We need to stay current with the demographics, the changing demographics, the different needs for housing. And I think we should support the passage or the adoption of the proposal. Thank you.
Else?
I'm Dawson Moore, 7759 Marion Drive. I'm only 39. I remember when Perry Farm was a horse farm. I remember when the Presbyterian Church was a field. My mom's only in her 60s. She grew up, there was no Birchwood, there was no Windward, there was no Bay Street development. There was 3 gas stations on Main Street. There was a gun shop. There was a lumber yard. I went to Bar Harbor the other day and they actively advertised at how unruly they used to be, that they needed to have a special light to alert the cops that would stand outside every day because of how much fighting went on there. I think there's a lot of things that have changed in this city. All those changes are because of planning and zoning decisions. I think a lot of those decisions around some of those bigger developments, Tamarac's one I didn't even mention. Those are arguably much more radical than what's being proposed tonight. And yet, all of those decisions added up to what a lot of people view today as the perfect quaint little town. I'm just having a hard time understanding why, I'm in support of these changes. I have 5 to 6 years planning and zoning experience myself. This stuff just seems like, although it's important and meaningful, it honestly just seems like regular, almost mundane planning and zoning stuff. I'm in favor of it in general. I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything to be scared of. I think the city's faced a lot more scary development decisions than what's before it tonight, and it's led to what everyone thinks is a great town.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm gonna kind of do what Kathleen did too. I'm Miranda Miller, 651 Second Street, and as Victor knows, I've been harping on this RRC now going on for about 3.5 or 4 years, only to be told all the time that it's nothing, I'm wrong. This entire community has said we're conspiracy theorists like the guy over there. Well, we're not. We're at the 11th hour, and that's why this room is full right now. The RRC and the DDA hold hands. One inhales, the other exhales. You cannot have an RRC unless you have an active DDA. Our DDA, it's about 5 people, all Michigan, the OHM, everything, the state of Michigan is already involved here, Mr. Iconelli or whatever his name is at the zoning and planning meetings is basically a lobbyist and a salesman for the RRC. He manipulates and he lobbies, which is exactly what the city manager staff has done tonight. He has abused once again for the 4th time when this city, when the taxpayers have come forward and said, we don't want it. He bragged how many times for how many years we've had to listen to this plan. And then he just gave us 48 pages for 18 minutes. And on page 8, page 27, page 35, regarding being aligned, the master plan being aligned to conform the definitions, the ADUs and all that. Never once is there a mention in here that this is all to become RRC compliant. The one man stood up and said that we are RRC compliant. We are, if you look at the real RRC, we are certified. We are trying to reach the RRC essentials, which is basically you are selling your soul, your property, everything to the devil. And money is not free. There's no guarantee by the time you give Michigan everything and comply the zoning that they're going to give us anything. It says right here to be essentially accredited. The essential status have all the key documents and practices in place to provide predictable development experience and meet local planning, zoning responsibilities under Michigan law. So folks, if we don't get out of the RRC, we will be rendered nothing but figureheads with the name of taxpayers, and staff and the other people will tell you when and how much you're going to write out of your checking account. Let's not forget, city manager has never been a city manager. He came here from Milton, Vermont at the age of 32 as a zoning and planner. And in his first year, tried to push a 20-year Headley on us. Can you imagine 20 years of unbridled, unrestricted access to our checkbook? And then the RRC on top of it. That's all I got. Thank you.
I'm from Pepper Street. I'm on the planning commission and I'm head of the DPM. I'm sorry, just wanted to say once again that in 25 meetings, not once, ever, never did we ever use the 3 letters HRC, RRC, never. It's never come up in our discussions, ever. Nothing that we have done, nothing that we have planned, nothing that we have talked about leads us to that issue, which isn't on the table tonight. You will discuss that issue at another meeting if you choose to do so. We're starting a forest fire over something that's not occurring. Good job. That's all I have to say. Enough is enough.
Brandon, keep it down back there. I'm gonna have to ask to have
Sorry,
you
I'm just
removed.
being native over.
Oh, baby.
Josh, will you get her out of here?
What? Oh, come on.
Being disruptive to the process. If you're gonna be disruptive and try and bully the people that are talking.
Leading the cause here too.
Maggie, you're gonna be the next one.
Whoa.
You may be the third.
Linda Rockwitz, 519 East 3rd Street. And I disagree with obviously the majority of the audience at the meeting tonight. My guess is I don't disagree with the majority of the citizens of this community. I have listened to and read the comments of the people who are vehemently opposed to the RRC. And the first point I would like to make is I see and can find no connection to the RRC and this zoning ordinance. I have tried to follow it. I just don't see it. I've listened and of course been concerned
because people are so vehement and think that this is we're gonna end up under the thumb of Lansing, or it's all, there's inferences of corruption and accusations. And I studied what I could find online of the RRC and never saw anything that led me to believe we would be under the thumb of Lansing, or that our little town, because of RRC, would be in jeopardy. I found a site. There are 312 communities in the state of Michigan now in some form, some state of working on RRC. I can't believe that they all are being duped into being under the thumb of the state. I also believe from my reading that basically RRC is a checklist of best practices to for the state to administer grants. When I did a bit of grant writing for the Friendship Center of Harbor Springs and the Food Pantry of Harbor Springs, every grantor has some expectations of what they need to know before you get the money. So I'm sorry that this has become so heated. I'm sorry about the accusations. If those of the people making accusations, if they have evidence, please share it. If they don't, please stop the malicious rumors. Thank you.
Oops, we had a hand back there earlier. All the way back.
Tom Varner. And just wanted to say, keep in mind, per the city's website, the zoning or the master plan is a guideline. You are not required to match legally to match the zoning code to the master plan. It's guidelines. One of my concerns is reducing the 12 zoning districts to 9 with 6 overlays, particularly making some of the residential areas commercial or central business district. That looks to me like opportunity for unintended consequences. Some developer comes in and wants to put a business in a residential area. Now have we opened the door for that? So that's my concern is we just need to make sure that we're not, we go from 12 districts to 6, but then you've got, or to 9, but then you've got 6 overlays, which makes exceptions to all that. So does that really make sense? Thank you.
Thank you. What else?
Told you're supposed to imagine people naked, but I'll let you know I'm not gonna do that today. I'm Michelle Gamble. And we have a home in Huntington. The zoning changes directly affect the rights of individual property owners, akin to a scenario where a homeowner petitions the zoning board of appeals for a modification. Even post-approval, any property owner who perceives an alteration in their property rights due to this new zoning could justifiably challenge the city. Therefore, the process is incomplete until every impacted property owner is duly noted. Property owners who best understand their property's unique qualities and nuances deserve the opportunity to review and respond to these changes. The city council should not endorse these zoning changes until all owners are notified via mail and granted sufficient time for feedback. This approach aligns with the standard protocol for the zoning board of appeals and should be no different in this context. We bought a home that was compliant with setbacks when it was built. Due to changes imposed by city council, it was no longer compliant, but a lot split was still approved. And a developer was allowed to build a house 8 feet away, entirely foregoing the 16-foot distance between two homes. We were not notified as promised by the seller of the land or the developer when they planned to build. Their construction caused extensive damage to our foundation, our stone wall, our yard, and broke windows in our home. This does not need to happen at Harbor Springs anymore. I'm asking city council to not approve these zoning changes until these issues are discussed and resolved for our future and for the good of all and not just the few. Combined, my husband and my family have been here for over 206 years. We were taught always to give back and not for recognition. If you take, put it back. Replace what you use, never exploit. Leave it as you found it. Decisions were made not for self-interest, but for the community as a whole. We are the stewards of this land, and we are responsible for maintaining it for generations to come. This migration to exploit the land for financial gain and self-interest does need to stop. That's all I have.
What else?
Hi, my name is Keeson Sandberdanker. I am a resident of Little Traverse Township. We moved here very recently from Ann Arbor, and my family is partly from California. I think this zoning change will make fundamental differences in the character of the town. I've seen this happen in Ann Arbor. You walk down East University Street there, it looks like a canyon. And I think the downtown with the different height restrictions will start to look that way over time. We'll have apartment buildings down there. We'll have businesses on the bottom floor, apartments on the top of it. If any one of you have gone to Ann Arbor, you should see what those streets look like now compared to what they looked like 20 or 30 years ago. Also, the addition of the ADUs and the flag lots will increase the population density of the town. Even with the current restrictions on, or the proposed restrictions on rentals and Airbnbs and things of that nature, the town will become more rambunctious, louder, and less hospitable to families. And this is one thing that I've seen in other communities. The plan here essentially follows the MML plans for higher density housing. And the question for the council really is, is that acceptable? And in this particular place, which is unique in the state of Michigan, there is no place like this in the entire Midwest or almost anywhere in the country. This will change the character fundamentally of the town. And I'd urge you to reconsider many of these proposals, because Harbor Springs in 30 years will start to look at other places, high density housing, many, many more people, and a very poor quality of life compared to what it is now. Thank you.
Well.
Nate Graham, 7973 South Pleasant View. Grateful again to be able to have this council and to be able to have all these laid out. You did a wonderful job laying those out again. Thank you. I too echo that we don't want to see the character of Harbor change. It's pretty damn wonderful just the way that it is. And being able to carry that character forward, we've got, I think, the biggest turnout we've ever had at City Council. Had 600 people online register recently that they really don't understand. And as much as some people are late coming to the party or just now arriving, I'm grateful to be able to have this and be able to see this going forward. But whether it's RRC or any other which way, we've got every merit in Harbor to be able to take care of our own. for that, I'm grateful to have all these people, you guys here, and to be able to hopefully see this go forward for the next 50 years. Let's keep it the same, keep it this way. Thank you guys for having this open council.
I'm Cynthia Schaefer. I live in Tamarack Trail. And I guess, as both Whitney and the young man from Ann Arbor said is, master plans are made to be changed. And I must have been one of those that came late to the party, but I remember when I first moved up here 15 years ago, and there was a big master plan going on, and then there was another one, and we hired those big consultants for hundreds of thousands of dollars who came in, and we had all the meetings at the church, and the whole outcome was it was really family oriented. And I think they said it's the three B's: beer, beds, and bands. And I don't know where this new master plan came from, because I mean, we developed a master plan in the middle of COVID. That doesn't make any sense to me. But all I'm saying is, the whole idea of I'm all about change, but not when it's detrimental to the culture that we have here. And I think it was the guy from Ann Arbor. I have never been so proud when I moved up here. I said, I have to tell you, whether I was working at the food pantry or working for Manna, I said, I am so proud to live in Northern Michigan, because I have to tell you, there is no one in Northern Michigan in our community who has to go without, because we do take care of each other. So this whole thing that's centered around money, it sort of makes me sick. And the whole idea that all these new ADUs, or if we build more houses, it's more income. I don't know where that came from. I mean, 10 years ago, our focus was to get craft businesses up here. And now all of a sudden we've somehow changed. I don't know how or where I was, obviously somewhere else, but I ask us to take a step back, because I had to tell you, I just think that there's a lot of acrimony, and it shouldn't be this way. So I had to tell you, I don't think everybody's communicating well, and I don't know where this master plan came from, because I follow all these meetings, and this thing came out of left field for me last year. So thanks.
My name is Bill Donahue, and I live at 277 East Bluff Drive. And I've been up here 42 years. We have a home in Chicago, and we're spending more time up here than we used to, but having a home in Chicago, trust me, I know what dysfunctional government is. I just have two questions, okay? And I realize there's a conflict between the old guys, of which I'm one, who want to keep things just the way they are. And it's pretty nice. And those that recognize change has to happen. So I have two questions. Number one is, how did this all start? And if you tell me the master plan, I was never part of the master plan, and when did it become the Bible? And my second question is, how does it benefit me as a resident? Who can answer, please? You can't answer? You can't answer those two questions. You want to change the entire nature of the town? Is that responsible?
When did we do the master plan?
2020 is when it started to update, and it was approved.
I can't hear you.
2020, January 2020 is when it started. It was approved in April of 2022.
When did it become the Bible?
Not the Bible.
Question.
So I'm feeling we got a few people who want to do something and are ignoring the population at large because they think it should be done. That's nice, but I've never heard of any of this until this recent controversy. And if you can't answer the question, I think it's highly irresponsible to do this. Thank you.
What else? Not it?
My name is Cindy Randazzo. I live in Pinecrest Street in Birchwood. And this is my first council meeting. I moved here, this is my first year, so I'm a real newbie, but I'm not new to these ideas. I worked for the government of New Jersey in the Department of Environmental Protection. I was also someone that worked in Kirkland, Washington for various different associations with the city. And the things that I'm listening to, I mean, I've moved 9 times in 27 years. So I've seen this kind of thing happen all over the country. And it sounds good, and you gave a great description, and it all sounded wonderful, like, oh, all the, everything was tied in a nice bow. But I've seen it in play. It doesn't always work the way that you're thinking it's going to. And it really changes. And it took me 29 years to get here. I've been waiting to come back here. So it's like now all of a sudden I see what I saw ruin the country all over again here in this beautiful, quaint town. It's not to say progress can't happen, but I mean, I was on the fire task force in Kirkland, Washington, when they used to have just one stoplight. And now they have fire equipment that's obsolete because they kept raising the buildings and the codes on the buildings. And they don't even have fire equipment that can help those citizens that they should have a fire in those buildings. There is traffic, like you can't believe. I, recently have been spending some time in Traverse City. I had to deal with the 405 in Washington State. I don't want that for our community. It's not, once you let the horse out of the barn, you can't get it out in. So it's just really consider some of these things that you guys are trying to do. And you think for the betterment of the community. And, if you build it, they will come. And it's not that I'm NIMBY and I don't want people in the backyard, but it's not always the people you want to come. So just really pace yourself with this stuff because you're gonna wreck what is just a beautiful community. And it took me 29 years to get here. So please don't.
Anybody else?
I live on Ann Street in Harbor. My name's Jocelyn LaPoe. And I've had family ties up here since 1879. My great-great-grandparents, my grandparents, my mother, all my families are buried right next to my house in the cemetery. And I lived in Detroit also part of my life, and I've lived in big cities. And if you want to live in a big city, go.
Well, all right.
Good evening, Karen Offield. I live 1216 Timber Pass in Birchwood. And I had a little place at the cottage company for a couple years. And so I paid taxes and I worked in the city, spent a lot of time here. So 4 weeks ago, when I first became familiar with all this, I saw some documents on the RRC, and it was noted that 75% of our zoning was almost ready. And so the next steps, 25%, would be the remaining left to do. And that's what we're, I think, here tonight to try to suggest to you guys to not vote, to not rush. So as we stand at the pivotal juncture concerning the future of our town, we want to take a moment to reflect what makes our community unique. The people tonight have mentioned many of those things. It's us, it's the land and the water. It's made up of generations of families that don't seem to want to leave our town, which is different than many Michigan towns. They want to come back. They want to raise their families here. We're unique and we're different. So there's apprehension now. There's undivided attention. There's action. And you all possess the authority to redirect the course of these zoning changes. You can make a difference tonight by just taking the rush from us. And it's not just procedural, it's a testament to the commitment to make Harbor Springs community stay really wonderful. So I think that there are 3 things that we can do. The The first is that we ask you to refrain from endorsing the new zoning tonight. We're not talking about a year and a half from now to be working on zoning. We'll do it quickly, but we want to all be involved. We want to do these copy clutches that we talked about 2 weeks ago. We're now paying attention, as you can see, got a full house. And we want to make it so that this stays a democracy. So then the other thing that we could do is that we could take the zoning plan back to the planning commission, Bill, and it would give us a chance to realign with our community. We could advocate on behalf of our friends and all those petition signers. I mean, those people, you know, they don't really know what's going on. That's a lot of people, 600 people, a lot of people.
Karen, I'm afraid your time's up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chip Everest, and I live at 4 Beach Drive. And what I want to say tonight is that there simply isn't enough understanding on the part of the council or the planning commission or the public about the ramifications of the proposed changes. At the last planning commission I attended, many members were simply unable to cite basic facts like setback dimensions, etc. There needs to be more understanding of the possible ramifications before any decision is made. Personally, I do want more affordable housing in the city. When I say that, I mean more housing available to the middle class. Folks who can get mortgages due to their careers like teachers, police, etc. I'm not talking about free housing or even Section 8 housing, but simply affordable housing for the middle class. My fear of the proposed changes downtown is that it will bring in developers and actually make the gap between affordable housing and our current housing today even worse. Again, we simply don't know what we don't know. And we should not risk it until we completely understand the ramifications of any decision. Please do not make any decisions tonight to the existing zoning till more is understood. Thanks.
What else?
Zoom.
To the Zoom.
SBH, please unmute yourself if you'd like to talk.
Hi, Scott Heston, 684 West Bluff Drive. I want to thank the opportunity for once again to speak on this topic. I'm asking the City Council to vote no on this ordinance. I didn't expect to have to become an expert in understanding zoning implications, especially not in a short 2-month period. But I would have loved to have had more time to understand the appropriate use of zoning overlays versus what should be a zoning district, or what the approval process is for planned developments. But despite the lengthy process that the Planning Commission has been through, I only became aware of the extent of this proposed zoning changes just before the January 4th meeting. Since then, I've been talking to everybody that I can think of to try to get a handle on exactly what these changes mean for Harbor Springs. And in doing that, I've become more concerned rather than less as I understand it better. So first, I want to extend my thanks to several members of the MSU Extension Service for helping me to understand where agricultural rights and zoning laws intersect, to Hannah from the Harbor Springs Farmers Market for input on the importance of agriculture to the future of Harbor Springs, and to all the voters I've spoken to in the past few weeks. I also want to thank Jeff Grimm for sharing his time and for patiently explaining to me the city's perspective on all of this. Later in this meeting, I believe Victor is going to speak on the increased community engagement in the past month, as we see at this meeting as well. He has pointed out it is on us as citizens to keep track of what is going on in our city government, and I, for one, was asleep at the wheel on this one. We've had opportunities to weigh in on the code before January, but I think that the increasing community engagement we are seeing now is because most of us didn't see the major changes being proposed until very late. And this issue goes beyond us just being ill-informed. It also means that a lot of the input that was heard by the Planning Commission came from consultants and professionals from outside the community. I think that fact shows in the proposed code, which is very professional and very well done, but doesn't maybe reflect what the people of Harbor Springs want, nor captures how we want our community to develop in the future. I think it is time not to ask us if we want tweaks or even zoning overlay fixes, but if we feel the whole proposal is right for Harbor Springs. So I'm asking the City Council to vote no on these changes. Now that the community is finally very engaged in the process, let's build a zoning code that reflects what we want, not what Beckett and Rader or the Michigan Economic Development Corporation think is best. Let's see if there can be another proposal that better fits the future that we want. And if the City Council does vote to approve this code, we in Michigan have the right to petition to have that code brought to a public vote. This would happen via Michigan Zoning Enabling Act Section 402 petition that would require the approved.
Johnston, your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, lady in the audience here. You want to?
Arnie, and good evening. And we're glad for having this opportunity to listen to each other's perspective and to have a chance to speak with you, my elected officials.
Could we get your name?
Emily Proctor, 780 Ottawa Street. You're welcome. I've had a few moments to review, well, I took some time to review the PowerPoints, talk with Victor a little bit more about what this particular, what these changes are about. And after this evening, I think I can say as an Odawa person, change is inevitable. We've had visitors upon visitors and folks who've come to this area for hundreds of years. And to be honest, I think change is something, and we heard this earlier, that we need to be prepared for. We also know in our community, we have many great social services and resources. We also know that not everybody benefits from those either. We have homeless people. We have folks who are unhomed, folks who continue to be in poverty, hungry, and we continue to have a segregated community here in Harbor Springs. I think this particular change, handful of the changes in this new proposed document will allow us the opportunity to provide supportive services for individuals who need it, desperately need it, to help create a more equitable and fair place to live, a place where folks can enjoy, walk down the street as equals. I think there's opportunity here. If there are areas to make change, I'm happy to see folks here. Maybe we can take a little bit more time, but I encourage us to look at these, especially the housing, as an opportunity for us to be more inclusive, to provide more opportunity. We know that we are struggling for people to work at our businesses, our restaurants, our libraries, our contracting services, etc. Law enforcement, if you will. We also know that housing is one of those main barriers, including access to fair priced items in our community. So though I love Harbor Springs, this has been my home, my family's home, time immemorial, I also am prepared for that change. As you can see, I also think we ought to find methodologies to work through this together. So I applaud the efforts put forth this far, but I also seek the ability for compromise as well as we move forward. So again, miigwech for this opportunity, and I will be sure to reach out to you if I have further questions, and I hope others will as well if there are places that they seek more information on. So thank you for hearing me this evening.
Andy Pappas.
Hello, thank you, Victor. First of all, I don't know if it's a problem with Zoom, but I'm seeing that is Zoom limited to only 100 people? Because if it is, then probably there's several people that would want to participate this evening that may not be able to. It is my understanding that more than 60% of the 1,600 properties are second homes here in Harbor Springs. The gauge of city engagement with its citizens is not the number of meetings held on a particular subject, but the participation of those residents. At best, I would say a minimum of property owners are aware of the impact of the changes proposed in this zoning change. If you fail to achieve public consent, you forever damage goodwill in government, which is pretty much at an all-time low already. You also create the risk of further lawsuits. This is easily remedied by mailing all property owners in the city the changes that you're proposing in the zoning code. With a change this large, it is an opportunity to bring the community together. There's no rush to the finish line here. I realize that the Planning Commission has had many meetings, but obviously from the results or from the comments, most people were not aware of those meetings or just now recognized what changes were proposed. If the city cannot achieve engagement above 50% of the impacted parties, they should place the zoning change on the ballot. In my current full-time residence, whenever there's a zoning change or hearing on either my property or property next to me, I get a letter from the township. To date, I've received no such letter from the city. Given that this zoning revamp is the first in a very long time, I think it would be prudent if every homeowner in Harbor Spring would be mailed an explanation of the proposed changes rather than simply posting them online. I do appreciate the summary of the changes that were presented tonight. Something as short as that would suffice. I wish the council or those apparently pushing these changes would be honest about the reason, and quite frankly, I believe it's funding. This push from Lansing is so the city would further qualify for state funds and grants. A noble goal, but not one that is devoid of strings attached. Those same fine folks in Lansing were the same ones who decreed that we could shop on one aisle in a grocery store, but not another during the recent pandemic. Not a bunch to be held in high esteem. Reminds me of the phrase, we're from the government and we're here to help you. Just be upfront with folks and let the argument carry the day. The push for density should be one decided by the voters, as the result will affect all the voters. I have yet, for example, have it explained to me in a rational manner why we have reduced the minimum house size. That was discussed briefly and then just voted on and approved. I don't understand that. I don't understand the reduction in lot width, unless the goal is simply higher density.
Mr. Pappas, I'm afraid your time's up.
I'm sorry?
I'm afraid your time's up. Thank you.
All right, I would just simply like to close saying I wish you would vote no on this proposed change.
Aaron Stroud.
Thank you, Victor. I just want this to be over. I've lived in Harbor Springs for over 30 years. My early years were here, raising our young children, traveling for our business. I did not pay attention to all the going-ons around here, but I know over the years, changes and updates happened. I remember the uprising about menu changes in restaurants or permitting chairs and tables on sidewalks for outdoor dining, restrictions on liquor licenses, requirements for parking spaces per restaurant, among other things. But in all the years I've lived here, I have never heard and witnessed so many uprisings about proposed changes in our community. From the proposal for paid parking to the relocation of a playground, and now the proposed zoning updates, the response and feedback has been heard and modifications have been made in response to the input. But the game of whack-a-mole continues on. The team of 10 experts on our planning commission have made proposals, and changes and objections have been handled fairly. There have been no fewer than 20 open meetings and public input opportunities. The planning commission chair has been amazingly forthright in his response to the input, and as a result, we now have another proposed zoning code. I would urge all city residents to have a front seat by becoming part of our various boards in the city. It gives you a whole new outlook on things that are going on inside. However, for reasons it's hard for me to understand, many objections to the proposed changes have led to personal attacks. This is not the Harbor Springs way. We have been a tight community, and through my own personal experience, people are very willing to support people in need. I keep hearing about the RRC driving this. It's so far from the truth. RRC is part of the Michigan Economic Development Corp., which is a private corporation. It is not part of the state of Michigan. Their goal is to drive business and jobs in Michigan. I quote from the Bridge, Michigan daily news feed. Rural northern Michigan again saw modest growth and remain a bright spot as residents continue to leave Metro Detroit. Per US Census data, Michigan overall growth has been sluggish, but northern Michigan is an exception to that. We got to get ready for the future, folks. Our town is landlocked. The boundaries are tight and there's little room to expand. If we do not have an updated zoning plan, it's hard to imagine what this town could turn into. It was so convoluted before. The zones overlapped and were not clearly defined. Look at towns and cities that do not have zoning, for example. I know all of us know about that. Our approved master plan, which again went through 20 meetings and lots of public input, requires the zoning updates. We have no choice but to prepare for the future. So I think it's time to move ahead and put this ugliness, vitriol, personal attacks, and misleading information behind tonight. City Council has the opportunity to review what. Okay, time's up. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Kenny?
Hi, good evening. Victor, I do believe we are capped at 100 people. I've received multiple screenshots saying that your Zoom is capped at 100 people. And as I'm sitting here, I just jumped on Google, and in November of 2023, it said the Supreme Court ruled that a city ordinance imposing restrictions on public meetings is unconstitutional. So I'm not sure, we probably had a bigger audience tonight, but only 100 people were allowed in. So I will be happy to share screenshots. Can you address that now to the public?
Do you want to, yeah, you're using up your 3 minutes.
Okay, well, that's a legit question as a citizen, so it's unconstitutional. But I would like to say we need to stop this approval until City Council has fully engaged property owners. Zoning is about property rights. It's a 14th Amendment issue, not a zoning act issue. Each of the 1,500 plus property owners has a right of redress if you take action. If you approve this and you have damaged their property right, regardless of the majority, they have specific right of protection in the state of Michigan and federal court. Property owners will continue to fight. I ask that this not be approved. Thank you.
You.
And Patton? Tim Patton? There you go.
Yes, thank you. I agree with so many of the comments, and I'll keep mine very brief. But I go back to prior meetings. The role of council and the city manager is to be for the people and by the people. This was for the consultants and for certain special interests. And you can just tell by the community uproar that this was never for the people and by the people. And I think that if you were to move forward tonight and approve it, you will have awoken a sleeping bear and there'll be consequences. So no threats, just saying, please, please, please be for the people and by the people. Thank you.
Frank Rains?
Good evening. 600 people have spoken suggesting that you're moving too fast. But how do we know this? We know this because we represent a petition with 600 signatures urging the remand of the current zoning proposal to the Planning Commission or its placement on a ballot initiative. This plea stems from a concern that the process is advancing without adequate property owner input. When you consider that Harbor Springs has over 1,600 properties, the awareness level gauged by attendance at the Planning Commission meetings appears minimal, perhaps 50 participants, and many of those objected to these changes. So as a proactive step, we've started contacting more than 5,500 area voters and property owners to inform them about the proposed zoning changes. This outreach contrasts sharply with a limited public participation in the official forums. It's imperative to question whether the feedback received thus far accurately reflects the community's stance. And given its recent completion and significant last-minute amendments to the zoning proposal, we urge a pause in the process. This pause is vital to broaden awareness and understanding among residents, ensuring that the decision made truly represents the collective will of Harbor Springs citizens. Respectfully, you cannot approve this change until this issue is resolved. Thank you.
James Kenny.
Thank you, Victor. I wanted to speak to the bigger issue here that several have alluded to and many have been wondering about, and that's the role of the city manager. The city manager's advocacy for specific zoning outcomes goes beyond the bounds of his administrative responsibilities, which primarily involve enforcing laws post-approval of the city council. This overreach disrupts the traditional balance of local government, as it is up to the Planning Commission as representatives of the homeowners and community members to navigate the legislative process, not the city manager. This is not an isolated incident. Previously, Victor utilized a city council meeting on October 17th, 2022 to present an official response to critiques from a campaign forum, a presentation that directly benefited two sitting council members and aided in their election. Furthermore, the city manager's insertion into public discourse on pending council decisions, notably by giving this presentation tonight, when he previously stated he does not speak for the Planning Commission, and not including all the letters that were submitted for this meeting tonight, refusing to comply with a FOIA request in a timely manner, and tonight not allowing every citizen to participate on Zoom, suggests a passive city council, and Matt, you have proved that again tonight. Such behavior presents a concerning picture of a city manager assuming legislative leadership without adequate oversight. Several tonight have mentioned that this does not have anything to do with the RRC. However, in this week's Harbor's Light, the city manager said he learned of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation would cover 75% of the costs for the zoning changes and the planning consultant if the city was engaged in being a redevelopment-ready community. The MEDC releases the grant money in 3 installments. At the beginning of the process, after drafting the zoning code is updated, and if the final zoning code meets RRC best practices. There is your link to the RRC. This blurring of roles and the lack of oversight severely undermines public trust. It's apparent that the mayor is neglecting his duty, allowing the city manager unchecked authority, which poses a significant risk to our community's character and well-being. Lastly, ask yourself why there are now police officers at city council meetings. This was not necessary until Victor's tenure and is very sad. Thank you.
Wow.
James.
Is it the character assassination meeting, or are we talking about zoning?
Take it easy. Just let them go by. Let it go.
iPad 4. iPad 4. Janie Jenkins. Oh, never mind. iPad 4's on.
I think you have put me on. I'm Barbara Wallace. My address is 102 Harborside Drive. And I would like to thank the city council for their time. I've served on public boards and I know it's a pretty thankless job. I'd like to comment on the last meeting that I attended in person for the zoning board. And there seemed to be quite a rush to get the changes passed until a citizen in the audience commented on the need for another overlay in the TR district on Bay Street. And the board then hastily inserted the overlay in order to pass the zoning proposal. And as an observation, it just seems rather disorganized way to conduct a meeting. And I've owned homes in Harbor Springs for over 45 years, and have seen lots of changes over the years. And the 3 gas stations in the middle of town was one of them. Stores have come and gone and have become something better. The movie theater left and returned, and it's way, way better. My point is, change is good, but we do an excellent job of developing locally and not with any oversight or money from the state. And that brings me to just a comment on the years that I have lived in Harbor Springs. And now I'm actually a resident technically of West Traverse Township, and therefore I cannot vote on anything that happens in Harbor Springs. But I wonder, have you ever included surrounding townships in your discussions, since everything you do affects those townships and me as well? And I have no say in any of it. So, I mean, my comments here really are kind of reflective of what I'm hoping will not affect West Traverse or Little Traverse and the surrounding areas, because I need Harbor Springs. I drive through Harbor Springs. I look at Harbor Springs downtown every day. And the zoning board, you know, at one point we were all getting parking meters until everybody woke up and realized what a bad idea that was. And the same thing is true of the playground.
Mrs. Wallace, I'm afraid your time's up.
I'd like you to please pause and do not pass.
Janie Jenkins.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm Janie Jenkins. I live at 441 2nd Street, and I'd like to ask the council to please do what is right for Harbor Springs and vote no on passing the zoning this evening. We've heard a lot of people that are concerned about the RRC, and I agree. Harbor Springs does not need to become a redevelopment-ready community. The RRC program is one that gives grants and incentives to towns to ready them for outside developers. And we do not want that, nor do we need that here in Harbor Springs. Our little town will never be the same if we move forward with these changes. Harbor Springs does not lack resources or community support. The Boardwalk rebuild and the Lyric Theater are 2 incredible examples of this. With the local support, Harbor Springs has thrived for 150 years. We do not need to align with external entities like the RRC or the Michigan Economic Development Corp. Those entities will dilute our town's character, the residents' influence, and the future. Going forward, transparency is crucial. We need to ensure that any development is defined openly and allows for community input and respects the legacy of our special town. If external help is needed, it should be a last resort and not a default pathway. I urge the council to prioritize community-led planning And please end the discussions with the RRC tonight. I mean, everyone keeps saying there's nothing to do with it. Why don't you just say it? Say it. Yes, we are or we aren't. Just make it clear. So we're not all going back and forth. Either way, the proposed zoning changes cannot be approved until all of these issues are discussed and resolved. And thank you so much for your time tonight.
Robin Johnson.
There we go. Hi, you all. Thank you so much. Glad to see such great participation and then another 100 on Zoom. I do wish I could be there in person, but like many, I work in another town and have responsibilities elsewhere. So my bedtime was about 48 minutes ago. So if you're making hash marks of the pros, the for and against, I'm asking, as I did at the Planning Commission meeting last time, please press the pause button on this. 3 to 6 months will not, I don't think will make a difference, and it will allow so many people who have concerns, questions, or suspicions to have those concerns, questions, and suspicions addressed. I also, it's my understanding that in the master plan, there was a survey, and that in that survey that 80% of the respondents said that they did not want to see changes to downtown. So out of 300 respondents, that's 240 who said no. Yet the Planning Commission is still making many changes that have the potential to change downtown, including expanding the central business district, streamlining development, and potentially increasing multi-unit housing. And it appears that nobody is listening to what the people are saying. So I'm a please press the pause button person, and I hope you will do that. And I hope you all have a great night. Thank you for serving the town, and thank you for all the people who are participating.
Thank you.
JRE.
Thank you, Victor. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm J.R. Elliott. I'm resident of Harbor Springs. Thanks for listening to our comments. There are great concerns that pertain to the cost of the proposed zoning changes. Cost to the city to oversee, protect, and maintain this new density and development plan. More is more. Substantial development will result in an increased demand and need for expansion of city infrastructure and services, all in a rising cost market. Increased demands for the sewer system, increased demands for electricity, demands for precious drinking water, and all infrastructure investment and repairs that go with that. Increase in demand for fire, emergency, police services, road repairs, street services, capital outlay for machinery and vehicles that handle increased demand of services. More is more for costs rising from the pressure for a stressed city staff and workers, the mental load from more needs and more demands of more development and more people. Will the proposed zoning result in neighbors living on top of neighbors, cause more pressure on schools, more parking pressure, more trash for landfills, more sewage waste, more vehicle traffic, more noise, more pollution, and much more runoff into our bay? Will it cost more expense with the workload for our city attorney when people defensively push back on too many people living too close to people in small areas? I've asked, and staff has said, there's been no cost analysis to determine what financial impact there will be on a city with regard to an increase in density and increasing development. A financial cost analysis has been discussed and has not been discussed in deliberation with the planning committee. To not undergo this protocol would be financially irresponsible, wouldn't it? To merely approve this expanded development plan without these financial impact numbers likely would cause an emergency summons to residents to clean up in the form of bond initiatives, increases in pricing of city services, or once again miraculously covered by private donors. Council, might it be prudent to find out what these proposed pressures and demands on infrastructure and services will cost all of us going forward? I ask that you please send this proposal back to planning for them to complete the cost analysis so that the good people of Harbor Springs will have a clear picture of what this new zoning will cost the city and by fault, the property owners of Harbor Springs. Thank you.
Allison Larson.
Hi, Allison Larson, 255 East Bluff. Since the end of January, there has been one, maybe two meetings a week on this topic with multiple taxpayers of the city and or of the neighboring townships who call Harbor Springs home, standing up and voicing their opposition to the zoning changes and to the RRC. Please listen to the taxpayers who have elected you as officials and take their wishes into consideration when you are making your decision. Please do not vote for this. We do not want urbanization and big city feel coming to Harbor Springs. We would like to keep it the small, quaint town that it is. We do not want to become a Charlevoix or a Traverse City. Thank you.
Robert Hall.
Good evening, Robert Hall, 409 Glen Drive, Harbor Springs. Thanks, everybody. At the February 22nd Planning Commission meeting, the city manager presented his opinion regarding the existence of conflicts of interest that could exist related to the pending zoning and RRC proposal. Victor's opinion was that no conflicts exist because every citizen could benefit, not just those of the commission or council. Respectfully, Mr. Sinodinowski has no standing as legal counsel, and it was inappropriate for him to render his opinion as such. And it's clear that only those wealthy enough to take advantage of the changes can benefit, not average citizens. There are a substantial number of Harbor Springs citizens and taxpayers who believe that Section 5.1 of the City Charter Financial Interests Prohibited is very relevant to the current situation. 5.1 reads, no person holding any elective or appointive office under the city government shall take any official action on any contract with the city or other matter in which he or she is financially interested. Any member of the council or other officer found guilty of violating this provision by a court of competent jurisdiction may be punished by a fine not to exceed $500 or imprisonment for not to exceed 90 days or both in the discretion of the court. It's a widely held belief that individual members of the council and planning commission have properties and businesses that would in effect benefit if the zoning revisions in the RRC were to be implemented. It is crucial that before moving forward with the approvals, that all planning commission members and council members disclose any and all holdings and business arrangements that may be impacted by the proposed changes. To maintain transparency and trust, these disclosures should be evaluated by an independent third party to ascertain if conflicts exist. The citizens and taxpayers of Harbor Springs are entitled to this process, as this legislation will have such profound impact on the future of the city. Finally, I've been made aware that today there is potential legal action associated with this legislation. The council and the city manager are aware of this. I repeat, the council and the city manager are aware of potential legal action. For that reason alone, I ask the council to postpone this decision pending outside legal review. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other public comment? Last chance. There we go.
So I was gonna speak for Wendy Reeves at 539 East Bluff. Basically, she has been attending all the zoning meetings. She's actually gone through the 32 pages of the RC best practice handbook. There's no taxpayer that should do this.
She says it's not of any interest, there's no benefit to her as a taxpayer. And based on the benefit of the citizens, she would request that you guys focus on paying our bills, doing the minimum of what you should be doing versus expanding the density of our community. And if you look at the room here, we had over 75 people. This room can only hold 160 people. Imagine in 10 years, if you do pass the zoning, how big you have to make our town hall. I mean, so we're talking about cost that's going to increase. And I do also believe on the last planning meeting, Nancy, her job was to get this zoning to the city council. It was rushed. There was a lot of questions. There was not positive feedback from the community. And we are here today again with the community not getting positive responses. There should be no reason that you bring anything to the city council where you don't have confidence at the low level. But here we are. And now you have a gentleman talking about a lawsuit. How did we get here? It's been happening multiple times. Since 2014, in our community where the Hotel Junelle wanted to put a parking lot in your parents' parking area, so there wasn't anything built there. The community came together, came to city council, people were upset, and the city council said, you know what? The people spoke, we are not going to turn that into a parking lot. And look now what Third Street is. You have multi-million homes there. You have homes that have been refurbished. It thrived on its own without having to go into being pushed with zoning that people do not want. So with that said, I would ask you to first talk about the RRC and really be transparent what that is. If there's nothing to be worried about, talk to us about this before moving forward with zoning. That should be really instrumental. I know of a couple of meetings that I attended with the RRC on Friday. We were asked to leave or they canceled the meeting. That is true. That is true. You canceled the meeting on us.
You canceled meetings.
Yes, you did, because we were there and you did not want to videotape those meetings. And so that is not transparency. And they just showed today in the audience how all this comes together. So if you don't know about it and playing, I believe you don't know about the RRC. I believe there are a few people that do know about the RRC, how it does come together with zoning. So get all the people in the room and make sure that we all understand what the RRC does with the zoning department. So with that said, I ask you guys to hold. Thank you.
See you, Bill. Good job. Yeah, anybody else? All right, one more maybe?
Good evening, council. My name is Tony Johnson, 430 Maple Street. Just want to make a couple of observations for your consideration. We've heard a lot about lack of understanding. And that's clear from a lot of the email communications that I've been receiving either directly or indirectly from people. A lot of the information that's been received. So let me first say, we've heard that there's 600 signatories to a petition. That's great. That's public involvement. That's feedback. That's engagement. I love it. The unfortunate thing is a lot of those email communications have had serious inaccuracies in the information that's been presented. So there's a possibility that the people that have signed up to those petitions are doing so out of fear from the inaccuracies that have been presented to them. I do encourage compromise. If this document is not perfect, then we need to continue working on it. We did that certainly during the planning commission phase. And I should actually, also state as part of my introduction that I am a member of the planning commission. There was certainly compromise made during the planning commission phase. If there's opportunities for more compromise, I would certainly encourage that. What I have not heard tonight is much in the way of suggestions. Stop, pause, don't endorse, don't move forward with this proposal. That's fine, but what's the substance behind that? If there are specific issues that people have concerns with, I believe they should be bringing those specific items to either the planning commission or city council for consideration rather than just saying a blanket, I do not approve, I do not agree. The last thing I wanted to say is to address the appalling personal tax on people. I think that's inconsistent with the values that we all hold or should hold in this beautiful town. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Boudet. I'm on the planning commission, 924 South Lambkin. And I just want to emphasize to you all, that this is a long process. We've endeavored to keep focused on the quality of life in Harbor Springs. That everything was appropriately scaled so that we reduce things as far as allowing the size of the lots, but people still are limited by how much of that they can cover with a building and improvements, as 40% is the same. We're really, really careful to try to honor what Harbor Springs is and to help promote it in the future and to maintain what we have and not to lose it, but to give other people the opportunity to live here by increasing housing. And that's the number one thing in the master code, the master plan, was to improve housing. And that's what we endeavored to do. We made some other changes to simplify, to clarify, but it was a process that had a lot of integrity, a lot of hard work by many people, and we heard from a lot of the public throughout all these meetings over all these years. Thank you.
Abby Powers, 293 West Lake Street. As you can see tonight, many people are only recently realizing this zoning plan would expand the CBD by 40%, even though it's been in discussion for a while, as some have said. No one has been talking about the master plan. I've heard that come up many times, but no one has cited any text in the master plan explaining this change. If the justification of this is the master plan, the paragraph should be stated. If it's not driven by the master plan, the planning commission should state the specific meeting in which it was discussed. You cannot make a major legislative change without meaningful public discourse. And I would say that's why we're all here, why we've all showed up. This one change may forever redefine the scale and scope of development here in Harbor Springs. The authors of the master plan, who are alive and well, should be asked to provide testimony to assure us that their intent was to expand in this manner. So I ask you, please do not approve the zoning plan tonight until this has been answered. Thank you.
Ron? Okay, guess we're done with public comment. You guys want to take a 5-minute break before we start talking? Or just go?
I'm It's up to you. I'm fine.
Well, good. Let's go.
Myself for a couple of minutes.
I'm
okay. Okay now.
You can see what happens. Yeah. All right, well, we've heard a lot of discussion tonight, good and bad. I guess we've all got a lot of questions. I have some questions pertaining to the new zoning code, so I guess I'll start. Could someone explain the rationale behind the 42-foot, the new 42-foot building height in the central business district?
You want that or you want me to do it?
You can start.
All right, I'll give it a whack. So part of that was through discussion with the planning committee and looking at, you know, story heights and various things regarding that. The main gist of it, I believe, is related to, we have the main block downtown on the south side of Main Street, where we have our planned development district. And in that district, it permits a story of a total height of 3 stories and 40 feet. We moved that to 42 for some architectural reasons, but the follow-up was also to create a limit with story height to not quite permit overall what was permitted within that area, because we saw some development that we figured might have exceeded what we really wanted to see in town with 3 stories and a rooftop deck. So we did increase the height to 40 feet overall, 42, but we limited the story height to either 3 stories without a rooftop deck or 2 stories with a rooftop deck. So the story height or the overall height is a little bit higher, but the story height is not necessarily that different from what we're seeing in town already. Anything else to add on that? Did I get it? Okay, got it.
Thank you. I answered that question.
I guess to follow up on that a little further, what are so you're talking on the south side of Main Street between State and Spring? Is that where you're talking about?
That's the area where we currently have a planned development district.
Okay.
The normal height limit within the DDA or the CBD is 2 stories and 30 feet. But within that specific overlay district, it permitted 40 feet and 3 stories.
Okay.
With rooftop decks on top of them.
Do you happen to know on other taller buildings in the CBD, what the heights are, buildings at present?
We have, I guess I can't say for certain on many of them. We have the new project that's going on across the street from the movie theater. That has an overall height of approximately 40 feet.
Okay.
The other tall building that we have would be the bank building. I'm not certain of what the overall height is on that.
Okay. Do you think it's close to 40 feet higher than, I mean?
It may be higher, it may be
Okay.
higher, yeah.
Okay.
We have a number of older buildings that probably exceed our maximum height limitations.
Okay. So, and if I'm understanding correctly, under the current zoning, the height limit for CBD is 30 feet. But there is one of the B districts that is already at 35. Is that correct?
B1.
B1? Okay, okay. So is part of this to make it?
I think to
the same?
provide some uniformity
Okay.
within the area.
First of all, I guess, you know, there's certainly some things I believe in the new zoning code that do benefit our residents. I just want to mention a couple. You know, having served on the zoning board of appeals for the past couple of years or so, I've seen residents apply for zoning variances for things as simple as extending a front porch so that it's similar to other front porches on their block. Or even building a garage with a living unit above, guest quarters, so that family can come and visit. And, you know, these applications, every time someone applies for a zoning code variance, it's pretty costly. It's hundreds of dollars. Money put in escrow and, you know, a big expenditure of city staff's valuable time. And under the proposed zoning changes, there wouldn't be a need for someone in the residential areas to apply for a variance such as this. So, I've asked people the question too, okay, what part about the zoning code don't you like? All of it. The whole thing, no good. Well, I think that's unfair too. The other thing I want to allude to is, someone also spoke about civility here. A few people made comments, and I used to be the superintendent of Harbor Springs Public Schools. Thankful that my students weren't here to see some of the personal attacks on people. I just don't think there's a place for it in our town. And I'd appreciate it when those people come to a public meeting. Sure, you can say what you want, but please be mindful of that. Thank you. I do have a question about our minimum square footage for our house sizes. That's something I've listened to a lot, and I know that Planning Commission had some good discussion about that. And we really went back and forth on that a lot. I guess my question is, the current code calls for 864 as a minimum. In the last several years, 10 years, I don't know, has anyone built a house that small in our residential areas? I don't know. I guess it's, maybe we don't keep track of that. I'm not sure.
Not many, but there are certainly a couple. A good example is right down here in the corner of Zoll and Bay Street. We have the Bay Street cottages. Some of those are as small as the minimum of 864.
Okay.
There are a couple others throughout town that are close to the minimum. Generally, that's not the trend. I think the trend is generally looking at how much of a home they can put on property as far as spatially, maximizing the value of their land.
Right, so I guess, I believe that the rationale was to match the Emmett County minimum house size, if I'm correct. And I guess, when I look at, I've seen some pretty smaller houses too that obviously look like they've been around for a while. And it might be a point to re-examine again. I'm not, I think that if it's highly unrealistic that someone might build a house that small because of price per square footage and affordability on the lot, maybe it's something to take a look at again. I don't see overall though zoning code changes leading to overdevelopment, which, makes Harbor Springs become the next Aspen or Bay Harbor. I just don't see the influx of residents causing this balloon to value elevated population density in our neighborhoods. I think Planning Commission was pretty deliberate in looking at these changes. So I'm generally, I think some of the things in there, most of the things in there are very positive for the city and forward thinking. I think it had to go from 17 to 9. When I look at a street like Ottawa Street, in the current code, there's 4 different zoning codes on the same street. So zoning districts. That's the other thing that I might want to examine is home occupations. Those are allowed in our residential districts as they are in some now. Right now, I believe it's a special use permit. And there's some guardrails placed on those. And I think that My wife is one that did come to planning commission with under a special land use request to have a home occupation. And I think when that's something that I think to put some guardrails back on that might be a good idea. I do think that that's something that neighbors should be notified of and come to planning commission, just like my wife did. Went through the process. Just to add a few more guardrails, but I like most of the proposed changes. I think planning commission has done a good job, was deliberate, acted in a transparent manner. I want to thank them. I think a great deal of thought went into these. And with maybe some minor tweaking, I think we could get there where people understand and are pretty happy with it. Thank you.
I would agree with a lot of what Mike has to say. I think a lot of the residential changes make a lot of sense, but I still question a little bit the CBD, and I don't know that we've spent enough time talking about the CBD compared to how much time we've devoted towards the residential.
One question and then statement, is that okay? Okay. I just want to make sure, Jeff, right now flag lots are okay, correct?
No.
No, they are
No.
not at all.
Right now in the existing zoning code,
Okay.
we have a minimum width and we have a minimum street frontage that a lot would have to have in order to be split.
Okay.
Under the proposed code with flag lots, there would still be a minimum size and a minimum width, but we would essentially be removing the minimum street frontage. We would be allowing for a property to have just a driveway access that would connect them to the street. And they would have their width then behind the property that's in front of them. Does that help?
Yes, that does. Thank you very much.
Good question. Would that development on the corner, it's kind of like Lake and Arbor, be kind of an example of what? That's a condominium. Is that a condominium association or what is that?
Lake and Arbor?
You're thinking Claridge. No, I'm talking about the corner of.
Not really the corner, just east.
Yeah,
of the-
you like drive
Arbor.
down a driveway and there's like 4 homes back there.
Where the picket fence used to be, so that's a little bit different. So that's more of like a planned development unit.
Okay.
Right? They have a driveway or a street that actually comes in and they had a large piece of property. They came to the planning commission. That was many years ago. They brought their plan in, they brought in their condominium documents to review. And then they approved that development with those homes there. So that's actually a road that comes in and accesses all of those properties there.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different, yeah.
There's a flag lot off Waite Street that backs up onto Easy Street. There's a flag lot, it's just a driveway through there, and it's been there forever.
Okay.
And it's, all you see is the driveway.
Right.
But it opens up behind those other lots.
They just built a new house.
In front of it, yeah, in front of it, right. And they were separate lots, but that's what it.
There's that driveway access
To the back.
to the back.
Mhm. But you need a lot, our lots are, what we're proposing are 52 by 132. And so you need a lot that's 264 feet deep in order to do a flag lot. No, there aren't very many of those at all in town. There's just a few. So I have a pretty good understanding, because as you all know, I sat on planning commission, sit on planning commission. I know that planning has done a great deal of work on educating themselves as well as reaching out to the public. I don't need to quote all the meetings and storybooks and everything that happened. I have personally read through the new proposed code at least 4 times, all of it. And I feel like it's a good code. There's certainly little tweaks that always happen when you do zoning codes, but I think it's a pretty good code. It is the code for the city of Harbor Springs. And we are hearing from a lot of folks that don't live in the city. I understand that the city means something to them. Of course I do, and they use the city, but this is a plan for the city. I'm struggling a little with some of the implications of telling planning commission that they don't know what they're doing. You know, that we haven't paid a good enough attention. I would challenge that. I think there's very dedicated people on planning and council that really, really care about the city. They may not see it the same way everybody else, some of you do, but I take real offense at those types of statements, not just about myself, but about the committee as a whole. I really do. I think it's a good plan. You know, I also have been very involved in it, so I've been very current with all the workings of getting it to where it is. Feel like I have a very good understanding of it. Yes, it will drive some changes. Definitely it will, but we're definitely planning for the future. Almost, not every comment, but almost every comment I hear with the folks that don't like it, it's all about they don't want it because they're okay with where they are today. And I struggle a little bit with that because we have to plan for the future. We're down 300 residents from 20 years ago in the city. Some people may think that's a positive because it gives them more room and stuff, but that's not a very sustainable thing for a city to keep losing population. And we need to do something about it. And I think we're trying very hard to be proactive to do something because it is going to happen. Changes happen every single day. I've been here 45 years. This is a very different town than it was 45 years ago. It's very, very different. And some of that is because it's just happened. There wasn't a whole lot put in place. Our zoning code went into place in 1976. That was a long time ago. And this is the first really major overhaul to the zoning code. It's long overdue. And I think it's pretty minor compared to a lot of things. So I'm very comfortable with it. If other council members need some more questions answered, I think that's fine. But I personally feel due diligence has definitely been done. Definitely been done at this point.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I do. You're done. I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'm done. I'm done.
I just wanted to make a statement, and I'm going to stand up because I can't see over the podium. I wanted everyone here to know that I've read all the letters that I've received, certainly, and many of the postings about the Planning Commission's work over these last years. I've discussed the issue of zoning changes with many residents and voters. The comments range from high praise for the Planning Commission for their hard work to wondering about the source of the extreme anxiety and fear being expressed by others in the newspaper and in social media. Some believe that there are specific issues that need to be addressed, and indeed some items have been changed by the Planning Commission in the last couple of months. Most are satisfied with and very complimentary of the work that has been done by the Planning Commission. Very few specific issues have been mentioned to me. Specifics that have been brought to my attention, I think all of them have been considered by the Planning Commission in one way or another. I don't believe that anything has been ignored. To suggest that the months of diligent, long, and detailed work by the Planning Commission, its committees, the city staff, and planning professionals should be shelved or trashed is an affront to the many honest citizens who have participated in this process. To Nancy, I will reiterate something that Nancy mentioned. The Harbor Springs population has decreased approximately 300 people in the last 10 to 20 years. Household size is decreasing, and 55% of the population is over 60 years old. This points to me to two issues. Many in this demographic would like to continue to live in Harbor, perhaps in a smaller or reconfigured dwelling. How do we solve this problem and keep the character of the city we love? How can Harbor Springs, and number two, how can Harbor Springs to continue to support its resort residents and tourist visitors with an ever-aging population? These changes have happened. They weren't anticipated, but they are the reality that we are living with. Change isn't easy for anybody, but it will come, and the city needs to try to prepare for it. Thank you.
You?
You're allowed to ask questions.
No. Not at this time. Thank you.
When?
You can submit them to the,
I'm sorry.
you could submit them to the city manager at a later date.
Why not my questions to the city council? Why would I submit it to the city manager?
Well, then you could submit it to the city council, email us your questions.
All right, thanks.
All right. I say I've gone through the proposed zoning plan. It's so much easier to read than the old one. If there was ever a question before, you'd have to come down and ask Jeff. And Jeff would thumb through pages to try and find you an answer. They put a lot of work into this. I don't think it's detrimental to the community. Maybe we haven't had enough public input. If someone had something positive to say, we'd probably be more interested in hearing it. So if someone had something constructive to tell us how to change it or make it better, we could improve on the plan that we have. I'm willing to wait and not approve this tonight and give people an opportunity to give us some positive, or not positive feedback, but some feedback where we could modify it if it's a change that would benefit what we have. But that's good. Just to say, you know, I don't like it is ridiculous. You know, Harbor Springs, we're all supposed to be well-educated, smart people. And to just come with a blanket statement like that is, I would think, embarrassing to you people.
Thank you.
So that's all I have to say on it. We still have to, someone has to make a motion, whether we approve it or not tonight. I know the planning commission's willing to listen to you people. If there's some positive things that could possibly do. But this nonsense with, you know, I hate it all, the RRC, it's got nothing to do with it. And you guys need to move past that and do something that's positive instead of negative. So that's my piece.
I think it would be really helpful if, like you just said, that instead of just saying you hate it all, if people have specific concerns, that they would say, this is my concern, and not.
That was never said.
It's been said,
Oh.
trust me, it's been
Yeah.
said.
Well, that may be, but I didn't hear it tonight.
I heard it a couple times tonight, and, you know, we've received hundreds of emails from people that don't live here.
But when you say they don't live here, does that mean they don't vote in Harbor
So that
Springs?
means they don't live in the city of Harbor Springs, which is a very small area.
No, I know.
Yeah. Well, it's like you, I mean, you live in Birchwood.
Right, but if we bought a home on Fourth
But
Street.
this-
we
Now
might
you
be-
have a home.
And
That's
this,
fine.
again, what I said, this is a city of Harbor
Harbor
Springs
Springs.
whole.
Yeah.
That is the people, not that it doesn't affect other people, but we are all sitting here because of the voters of Harbor Springs. They're the people who put us here. That's why we're at this table. And this is a code for the city of Harbor Springs. So we certainly do listen and we certainly do hear you. But I will reiterate, did not hear tonight, and I've sat through a whole majority of all of the meetings on both sides, very few specifics. It's more, I just don't like it. It doesn't work for me. I like what I have here already. This isn't what I want to have happen. Those aren't particularly productive or helpful, truly. They aren't productive or helpful. So I'm ready to put it out there, but and I can do that. I prefer someone who didn't sit on planning, did it. If you're ready to do it. If you're not, we're a council of 5. I'm gonna do what I need to do, but I feel very comfortable with it and I've heard very few specific concerns, in all honesty.
What do we want to do, gang? We're gonna approve it tonight? We're gonna wait?
Well, I mean, I have a few specific questions, but, if it were presented as an all or nothing, I would say all, and I would approve it all. However, if the rest of council feels that we need to allow a little more time for, feedback, I'm okay with that.
I mean, we need to, I think, make a motion.
Right, yeah,
And,
someone needs
I
to
mean,
make a motion.
I can do it, but I think it will be better.
I can make this.
Like, what are you gonna do?
I would make the motion that we don't pass the ordinance tonight. And that we do a couple more public forums. Or try and get some more input from the residents of the town, homeowners in Harbor Springs. And voters, homeowners in Harbor Springs.
Right.
And maybe put it on the agenda in June for a final vote. And that'll give us time to hash through some of the details. That would be my motion. Long-winded.
Appropriate wording for.
Yeah, I think that's fine wording for a motion. Yeah.
I'll say.
Michael
Behrman.
I'm sorry, do you mind if I ask for clarification on, so you asked for more public feedback? Do you want that to happen at city council level or at the planning commission?
Yeah, I think city council is fine, and then we can make note of it and send it if we deem it appropriate and send it.
Do you want public hearings or
Sorry.
just want it on the agenda?
I think it should be a public hearing.
So we should set a date.
Monday.
I mean, maybe we need to pass motion first. I don't wanna. Jump in here.
And I don't know, maybe June's too soon. If we want to try and include as many people as possible. Because I hear that a lot, that we're trying to pass this in the dark when no one's here.
I hear that, Matt, but I also feel like a majority of our voting year-round residents are here. And they have been here. And I think just because they aren't willing to sit in some of these meetings, to me, it says they're okay with it, or it doesn't matter, one of the two. Because we all know when people are opposed to something, they're much more likely to speak up. I mean, we know that, that's across the board on everything. I think June's a long time. I would really like, and I'm not getting your motion, I can vote no, but, I think June is a long time, and I think a majority of our voting residents are here and have been. And if they wanted to weigh in, they would be weighing in. So that's my take on it.
What about taxpayers?
That's what I'm thinking, the taxpayers. It's not all about the voting members of the community.
It's not, but they are the folks that put us here, and that's the folks that are taxpayers.
Can remove.
Excuse me?
No, you can't.
taxpayers vote, others that are not voters here vote at other places.
That's true.
So it's a
It's their
balance.
choice.
It's their choice of where they want to vote. I mean, that's everybody's choice. And we all only get one place to vote. So I'm fine if you all aren't ready to vote on it. Of course I am. I think June's a long time. I think May is more than enough time. It's another 2 months.
I feel like I don't think we need to specifically pick a date. I think we should just continue with getting the more specific feedback and once we're happy with it, then we decide to pass it. I don't think we have to pick a specific time. I think this could, I mean, we could continue to discuss it and find some middle ground on some of these things and then we will pass it when it's time.
Okay. Do we need to set a date?
If you're gonna hold a public hearing,
I think
yeah,
a public
if you're
hearing.
not gonna do a public hearing, then.
Need to set a date for.
But we don't have to.
You can just have regular council meetings with public and comment.
Are you asking, do we need to set a date for?
When we're gonna vote on it again?
Yeah.
That was my question. I'm sorry.
But we would need to set dates for public hearings.
Got it. I understand that.
We have to set it 15 days ahead, but all our meetings are public meetings.
Right.
So the only difference is that there's notice put out for a public hearing. People are aware of what's going on. I don't care.
Sometimes,
If you feel more comfortable with public.
there's something to be said of, a one issue. You know, if it's just one issue, it'll be more focused.
That's fine. Well, yes, but however, that you have to notice. So.
How about we do the public hearing in May,
Okay. Okay.
and then we'll take it from there.
That's all in this one motion.
Very cool.
We do have a original motion and a second on the table, so.
Yeah.
Let me,
Yeah.
Why don't you read it back?
as of right now, I've got a motion by Mayor Bogira, seconded by Councilperson Macho to not pass the ordinance at this point. Few more public forums and public input and possibly put on the agenda in June. Now we can amend that motion. You can, with support from Kathy, or we can dismiss the motion altogether and come up with a new one.
Right, it's amended to do the public hearing in May, in the first meeting in May.
Motion
May I
by,
suggest you use the word postpone instead of not pass right now?
That's fine, we can postpone it.
Yes, I think that's good. I agree.
okay, so I have a motion and a second, that amended motion. Now I'll do a roll call. Jamie Melky.
Can you repeat it
Yeah.
now that it's amended?
Yeah.
Sorry.
By Bogira, second by Macho, to propose approval of the ordinance approving the zoning code. Pending. The public hearing in the second.
The first Monday meeting, which is May 6th.
Yes.
And yes, I do go back and listen to this meeting 57 times, so it will be worded correctly. Kathy Macho,
Yes.
Nancy Rondell,
Yes.
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
Matt Begira,
Yes.
motion carried.
Save your clapping, think about some ways that we can improve this and come back in May with some feedback. For us.
We got a couple of things before we go to closed session. So, 5A is, tree advisory board appointment. I'm gonna wait for you to drop out or.
Right.
All right, tree advisory board appointment, we have, Gail Brown, from tree board, she resigned, she was filling a 3-year term that expired in December of 2024. She's obviously the chair of the DDA, so she's dedicating her time to that board. We do have one application from Carol Winnard, to fill that role, so the appointment. Our entire council. Carol.
Do you need a motion?
Just, it can be all.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Approve it.
All in favor, Carol, aye.
Aye.
Do the city manager's report. Reminder, we are open during spring break, but we are closed Friday, March 29th for the Good Friday holiday. The Bluff Stability Committee is holding their first meeting on Wednesday, March 20th at 11 a.m. So you want to be there, come after that. We have seen an increase in our social media, Facebook, Instagram, well, not Instagram, Facebook and YouTube, especially our email notices. We do have about, well, it's gone up even since I wrote this, it's now at 249, but as of Friday, we had 245 people subscribe to receive email notifications. So it's been a great tool for people to figure out what's going on, and more people are finding out about it. So that's great. As far as meetings that had happened, of course, the planning commission met a few times. Well, sorry, they met on March 7th to discuss the zoning code. March 11th through 13th, Jeff DeSestra led the board of review meetings. The DDA had their March 13th meeting, talked about Merchants Walkway. And the tree board discussed at their March 15th meeting, Pocket Forest, Harbor View Park, and priorities plan, as well as coming to council for an update, an annual update, and potentially to request some resources and assistance from council on implementing some of the tree policies and goals. Finally, just a couple of meetings we had outside, I've had outside of the board meetings. We met with George Webb's attorney to discuss the renewal of the lease on city property at the airport, which we'll be going to closed session to talk about a little bit here. There was a remote MPPA Board of Commissioners meeting, and then I did have a great opportunity to speak on behalf of the city at the Chamber's State of the Community on March 14th at a luncheon. So that is what I have.
Great.
So item B is the lease renewal of the city-owned property of the web. Attorney Jim Raymer can give you a motion to go in closed session to review a memo related to it.
Go ahead, Jim.
Should I do that? Thank you, sir. We would need a motion to meet in closed session under section 8H of the Michigan Open Meetings Act to consider the written opinion of the city attorney as to the meaning of the requirements under the lease agreement with Jervis Webb to negotiate in good faith. And that would be the motion somebody would need to make.
So moved.
I'll second.
Michael Guerra.
Yeah.
Jamie Melky.
Yeah.
Nancy Rondell. Michael Behrman.
Yes.
Kathy Marshall. They're
Yeah.
now in closed session.
You gotta speak right up. Yeah, I get covered up.
We didn't see it. Yeah.
No.